All right, welcome to an episode of The Rational Educator. In this episode, what we want to cover is a unique use of an idea that parents and educators can use, heroes, as a focal point, and more than just a focal point in which to enter a curriculum, but a gateway. Now, what do we mean, first of all, by a hero? Now, this was all inspired by a curriculum that Deanna and I created for seventh grade students based around a heroic character or person that middle schoolers could focus and study in order to learn about a wide range of things, from literature to science to math, using a hero at the center. Now, for us, what this meant was a hero as that person or character that is admirable, has some kind of a moral code that can be used to inspire. Now, that was our starting point, and that gave us all kinds of people or characters to focus on. Now, it turns out that Dr. Andrew Bernstein on our panel has written a book about heroes. So let's toss it to him for the definition that he used in his book.
And you know, Joel, thank you. I just happened to have a copy here lying around accidentally. So I could pick it up and show it very conveniently. Anyway, the title is Heroes, Legends, and Champions, Why Heroism Matters. And one of the things that I tried to do in this book is to identify the most salient characteristics of heroes, regardless, either gender, regardless of race or nationality or tribe or ethnic group or anything like that. What does it mean for a human being to be a hero? And I identify four characteristics. First of all, a hero takes action in promotion of human life. He's not a killer or a destroyer. He's a builder, a creator, and a constructor. Second of all, a hero faces all kinds of opposition that might daunt or dismay a lesser person. The hero need not be fearless. In fact, I think it's irrational to be fearless when somebody's trying to kill you, for example. But the hero is undaunted. The hero is undismayed by the opposition and stands up for life-promoting values in the face of or in the teeth of such kind of opposition. So that's a second characteristic. A third one is prowess or ability above or beyond that of every man or every woman. That prowess could be intellectual, it could be physical, it could be some combination of the two, but the hero stands out. Sherlock Holmes is an example. It's just, he's the smartest guy in the room, always. And it's not even close, in the Conan Doyle series. And he puts his genius in service of human life. He's trying to either prevent murders or crime, or he's trying to avenge it. He's trying to bring the bad guys to justice. In Jack Schaefer's great little book, Shane's an unbelievable physical specimen. He's not a big guy. He's so well coordinated. He's so lightning fast that in any kind of a fight, fist fight, gunfight, he's virtually unbeatable. Again, he puts his prowess in service of human life. So that's a third characteristic. And I think a hero achieves victory or triumph in at least a moral sense, if not in a practical sense. Cyrano is a good example of that. He's defeated in his endeavors. None of his plays are ever produced. He never gets to make love to the woman he loves. But he's so uncompromising. He stands up to every type of foe, and battles them in every possible way, intellectually, physically, whatever it is. He's completely undaunted. He stays true to his values, even to the very end. That Cyrano is, I think is a victor in at least a moral sense, and as a result of these characteristics, I think a hero's life is inspiring to honest people. Shows us the human potential, shows us what human beings can be, can do, and it shows us that in many cases that the good can triumph in a practical sense, and certainly at least in a moral sense.
Well, one of the great things about using heroes as a gateway to learning to education. The story of heroes are told in typically a compelling way through story. And we know that since the beginning of humanity, great lessons were told throughout the ages by using storytelling, by using heroes as that focal point. We know this through history, even through anthropology. And one of the things that we used in our curriculum was to take a step back and see what some of these common stories that are told over and over again, what those stories are. Joseph Campbell noted that there were journeys and stories that heroes throughout all kinds of cultures commonly went through, these stories that were told over and over again, even in civilizations that never knew each other. And that's some of the things that we used to talk about in our curriculum. And in fact, Deanna uses some of those lessons to teach to some of her students. What are some of those ideas that you are communicating with some of your students even today?
Well, definitely. Right now I'm doing a unit on like heroes of exploration. And so I have a sixth grader who's reading, he read the song lyrics to the song Davy Crockett. And now he's reading excerpts of the autobiography. And we're having the discussion of lore versus reality. And that for a lot of heroes, there's a lot of mythology often associated with them, even if they were real life people. And so it's really interesting. It's a very fun exercise, actually, to go in and to read, as close to a biography, or this is an autobiography of Davy Crockett, but reading this and then looking at the lyrics of the song and kind of seeing how, even though when you read his biography, he's still a hero, he's still an extraordinary man, did amazing things, but he did not kill a bar when he was only 3. And so having those conversations a middle schooler is really fun, and talking about what makes him a hero, what from his actual life is heroic. And after this, we're going to read Lewis and Clark, and again, have him read some of those journal entries from their trip all the way to the Pacific Ocean, and really kind of draw out what makes a hero a hero. And the reason why I think this is so important, particularly in today's culture, is this particular student didn't have a lot of opportunities to study heroes in his lessons. And he's very creative. In fact, I had him do a little research on the hero's journey, and he wrote, I had him create a fictional story using that as a template. He wrote this amazing creative story, but what he also is missing is the mechanics. So we're using heroes to teach him the mechanics of grammar. And I taught him today how to use a thesaurus. And so it's really fun to use this as a backdrop because it is inspiring. And he wants to, go in and read about these people that he can look up to or can find traits that are admirable. And I think it's much better than just, sort of cherry picking something because it checks off a box for whatever diversity category you're trying to meet, but to actually go in and teach about real heroes. He's also going to be reading the book How Spacesuit Will Travel. He's going to be reading Shane by Jack Schaefer that Dr. Andrew referred to. And so there, you can use literary heroes, but you can also use real life heroes to teach kids not only, mechanics of writing or different things, but also moral tales. And it can really help them understand the kind of person that they personally want to be.
Dr. D, for those who are too young to remember the old Davy Crockett TV show, the song, killed a bar when he was only 3. That was the pronunciation for bear, right? So it was a bear. But yeah, at 3, I doubt he was able to kill a bear. But these kind of legends grow up around real life heroes. Remember the one about Abraham Lincoln, that he was born in a log cabin that he helped his father build? I mean, that's a pretty good trick if you could,
It is,
if you,
George
if you-
Washington and the apple tree didn't happen, but, and even Johnny
right.
Appleseed, Paul Bunyan, I mean, there's a great Americana heroes that are
Yeah,
really fun to teach. And then, and it's probably just the historian in me, but I love to complement the lore with actual primary source readings, and it's almost like a detective story for them to figure out what's true and what's not. And it's a really engaging exercise.
Deanna,
sounds
I
great.
think the word that you used, engaging, is the real reason why we're concerned with using heroes as that gateway to education. Because
Mhm.
what is a hero, if it's a good hero, if not an engaging story? So whether it's a literary character in which the purpose is to tell a compelling story, or if it's a real person that lived an extraordinary life, that is also compelling.
Right,
What the most important um, uh, technique or goal in education, at least a starting point, is to engage the student, to motivate them, to get their interest, so they are going to immerse themselves in what you want to teach them.
right. I want to add here, that in literature and history, there are multiple reasons for reading hero stories. Some of the ones we've already covered. It shows, for people of any age, but especially for children, it shows us the human potential. It shows us the power of the good. It shows us that good can triumph in this world. And then, to piggyback on your point, Joel, literarily, these are the most vivid stories, because part of what makes a hero is he or she has some goal, has some purpose in his or her life, some life-giving, dream that this person wants to bring into reality. And so that there are generally opposition, there's generally, opponents or impediments or obstacles, and then they struggle. And that struggle builds to a climax, which gets resolved in this final battle. And so, a hero story almost always has the essence of great literature, has conflict, and it draws you in, it draws the reader in. You want to see how is the conflict resolved. And that's true in history as well. You want to get the kids reading and fascinated about literature and history. It's true in history. So, we could look at any of the, and it's just off the top of my head, Maria Montessori, who wants to revolutionize childhood education. She has all kinds of obstacles and, and opponents in her way. And there's a struggle there. Abraham Lincoln wants to prevent the South from seceding and establishing a slave society, and eventually to push the 13th Amendment, abolishing slavery through Congress. And you have struggle, you have conflict, and you draw the reader in at any age, because you want to see how the conflict is resolved. So to get kids reading and to love reading, and to realize that books are fun and that books are fascinating, have a lot of really exciting stuff in them, you can't equal hero stories for that, whether it's in literature or history. And you can do the same in science. You can show the struggles of Copernicus or Galileo or Darwin or Pasteur, against various, sounding the theme of Ayn Rand and the Fountain, that these great innovative minds always opposed by powerful social elements. And you could get kids interested in science by showing the struggle of some of the great heroes of science. And I think you could do that in any field, and I think we should.
And in our
Absolutely.
curriculum, we actually had a module that we called Heroes of Science, in which we included the novel by Robert Heinlein that Deanna mentioned earlier, Have Spacesuit Will Travel, as the literary component. But we also had kids reading about Archimedes as a hero of science, and the engineer Eupolemus of ancient Greece, who was able to create a tunnel through an entire mountain by digging from both ends and having them meet in the middle. If you want to get the kids interested in the manner that they would as if they were reading a great mystery story, you present these heroes as if they were characters in a story. We actually had primary sources that described how these great engineers of the past were able to create their inventions. So we did have a way to present these even scientific lessons in the form of stories. And that's again why we say that heroes are and can be the gateway to education. Now, in
Yeah, we
today's
could do the
world,
same. We could do the same with some of the great mathematicians too. Show students of any age, especially kids, how
Absolutely. I
great
mean,
mathematicians have struggled. Get
yeah,
them
I mean,
interested in their.
Euclid is a great example of that. We also went as far as including creative heroes. So we included like Mozart and talking about what he did, and he was a virtuoso, but also he had a lot of things to overcome in his life. He had a very tumultuous relationship with his father, and he was always out of money. And so his story itself is pretty interesting. Leonardo da Vinci is a very interesting character, which kind of bridges art and science, which is a really fun lesson to teach kids that, we think of subjects in these little, columns or in these silos, but they're really interrelated. And so I love teaching younger kids about Leonardo da Vinci and how he transcended so many different areas, but is really heroic in his thinking, particularly for that time period.
Right, and heroes come in all shapes and sizes, right? So, for example, Hypatia, who was
Oh,
a
yeah.
brilliant Greek, she was a brilliant Greek scientist, mathematician, right? Struggled with burgeoning, faith-based Christianity, and eventually was murdered, at least according to the stories I've read, was
Yeah.
murdered brutally by a fanatical Christian mob. But she, but she was a great achiever in in the field of science and mathematics in Alexandria. So I mean, there's all, you want to glorify women or different minority groups. Any rational person, I think would say, yeah, let's find the real heroes: George Washington Carver's, the Booker T. Washingtons, the Martha Collins, people like that, and let's see real heroes and heroines, and let's show their struggles and show their triumphs and their achievements.
Absolutely. When I was teaching college, I had a class called Great People, Great Ages. And then I had another class that focused particularly on women. And I would pick heroic figures from history or that created something. So sometimes I would bring in Mozart or I would talk about Da Vinci, but I would pick a particular figure going back to the ancient world and then finding one in every era of history to show how remarkable these amazing individuals were, heroic in their own right for various different feats that they were able to accomplish and things that they were able to overcome. And it was one of the most fulfilling parts of teaching humanities, was this great people, great ages, and really having a wide breadth. And every semester I would change the people that I would teach. So it was really fun. And even in the, for college, the response I got was pretty interesting. People saying, wow, I didn't know that there was, a former Roman slave who was able to accomplish so much or that, for instance, I would always teach about Hypatia, and they were shocked that there was a woman in that time period that was so well educated and even was teaching very well thought of young men who came from very good families, who went on to be very accomplished in their own right. And so I think, students of any age, like you said, Andy, and people of any age, I mean, even as an adult, we still need heroes. We need people to look up to. I mean, it gives us, one of the reasons to get out of bed in the morning is to think, wow, I have this opportunity. Today is a new day and I can do something possibly heroic. Now, we don't all maybe just think of that when we're going to the grocery store, but really they're inspiring. I think that's why even the hero movies tend to be really popular my entire lifetime. I mean, I remember being a kid and going to see the Christopher Reeve Superman and just being so inspired. And these movies, hero films, keep on getting remade and remade. Now, I think some of the modern ones are missing the mark a little bit, but there's still this need for heroes.
Yeah, and I was mentioning about women and minorities and everything. I think you're touching upon a broader and deeper point. The hero doesn't have to be the same race as I am or the same gender I am to inspire me. So I can read about Martha Collins, who was an extraordinary teacher, did extraordinary things. Well, she's black, I'm white, she's female, I'm male, doesn't matter. I'm enormously inspired by your human being, your pursuit of life promoting goals, in this case, to be a superior educator, overcoming all kinds of obstacles to really raise her kids, her students from academic levels to enormously high academic levels. It's a great achievement. And what tribe we're a member of or what gender doesn't matter. This is a human being doing great things. I'm enormously inspired by it.
Well, it's not an inaccurate thing to say that the current state of modern education does not value heroes, right? It's not a hero encouraging environment, let's say. So so let's just talk for a few minutes about why that might be the case and how is that a detriment to kids that go through that kind of a program.
You know, for at least the past 100 years, intellectual culture, literary culture, much broader than the educational system, has favored the anti-hero mentality over heroes. And the anti-hero is the Woody Allen has done a great job, monetizing this in comedic roles. The anti-hero is the kind of poor schlub who's who's dominated by a dysfunctional family, or he lives in that's the Freudian version, or he lives in an oppressive society, that's the Marxist version. And John Steinbeck's characters, Grapes of Wrath and Mice and Men, there's the oppression of the capitalist system. Willie Loman and Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, again, oppressed by the capitalist system in various ways. The hero is generally, I saw a good definition, I think it was on Wikipedia of all places, that pointed out the hero is generally above and beyond every man in his or her capacities. Well, the anti-hero is like below, every man and every woman. And it's just kind of dominated by various types of social forces, whether it's the family unit or whether it's the political system. And it's just kind of a weakling, and morally, you just can't stand up and fight against, never mind triumph against, the various forces that have victimized him. The anti-hero is a victim. And I remember even, when I was a kid, going back many years in high school, reading Catcher in the Rye, which, to me was a kind of a boring story. I felt for the character, Holden Caulfield, who's, on the verge of a mental breakdown. He's on the verge of a nervous breakdown. But that's not the kind of literature that I would choose. Certainly not predominantly. You want to mix in some of the anti-hero stories here, although I think there's better. With all due respect to J.D. Salinger, I think there's better writers than he is. But I would have a predominance, at the very least, a predominance of hero stories, and have anti-heroes just by contrast. So we can point out the moral philosophic differences and the literary differences in the stories. So I would have the kids reading hero stories. But yeah, the anti-hero mentality dominates serious culture today, certainly in the education system. Holden Caulfield would be a hero, I think, relative to a lot of the characters that the kids read about today. And the second point is they've sexualized the curriculum and the reading to such an extent. They want to push gay or LGBTQ themes, and heroes are just not valued anymore. They want to show that various groups in society, whether it's because of sexual preference or it's because of race or gender, are victimized, they're oppressed. We've discussed this before. This is the postmodernist, dominance in the schools. And so there's a new reason for anti-hero stories, victims. They're victims of, the white male oppressors and so on. So your heroes, first of all, I think it's one last point before we turn it over to Dr. D. I think, LGBTQ themes and gay themes to me are marginal. They're not all that important, and they're not all that interesting. But if you did want to talk about that, I would have a hero story. Somebody who's gay or, trans or whatever, instead who stands up, I'm a human being. I have, maybe he's living in Kansas, I don't mean to, disrespect Kansas, but some Bible Belt place, where being gay is really, is a real stigma, and stand up the way Howard Roark would in The Fountain, not push it aggressively, face, certainly not cower, from social disapproval, but stand up, pursuing my goals, pursuing my values very calmly. This is who I am. And, somebody who's a real hero and has probably has a positive impact on his community. That if I was going to deal with gay themes like that, that's how I would do it with a hero story. But the anti-hero mentality and the victim mentality is dominant in serious culture, and I think in literature classes in the education system.
So what's happening in schools today is that they may have a hero, a remarkable woman, say of color, from, like we can use Marva Collins again as an example. And so she is presented, but when she's presented, it's not that she's an individual who is inspiring these kids and is just being this amazing teacher. It's, look what this Black woman did when you have this white oppressive society, or look what this particular, whatever checkbox you're doing on the diversity column. And so basically you're making this hero into a victim. And that's what you're focusing on, not the attributes of the person, the moral, fortitude, or what they were able to accomplish, or how they inspired. Those things don't seem to matter as much. But like what you said, Dr. Andy, that idea of celebrating the victim, and that's what's really happening. So there are heroes. I mean, I know Hidden Figures is read a lot. There are books that are read a lot, but they're not reading it to, it's more like, oh, wow, look what these women could do. Yeah, they were great mathematicians, but they were in this white oppressive society, and that's what they're focusing on. And so it's really sad to see that when they are introduced to heroes, it wouldn't be the same way that you or I would teach it. It's from a totally different postmodern, beyond postmodern, whatever era. I think we've gone past postmodernism now, the end game of postmodernism, where everything is just nihilistic,
How about sub postmodernism? How about that?
I just call it nihilism.
Yeah, that works, which means, of course, destruction for its own sake. But can you imagine, guys, if Marva Collins were alive and here, and I told her she was a victim and treated her as a victim, she'd probably slap me across the side of my head.
Right? I mean, any of these, remarkable individuals, and that's what they are. Who cares what? I mean, we don't get to choose. We're born, right? Who cares what you are? And it doesn't matter. You shouldn't focus on the, really surface level differences. You should focus on the accomplishments and on the values of the individuals. And I think that is really what's fallen to the wayside.
And so just to put a capper on that idea, there are reasons, and this can be found all over the education literature, that the reason that particularly younger students are presented with such sexualized curriculum, this is not an accident. It's premeditated, and we can devote a whole show to this. But this goes back deep into the educational literature early in the 20th century, where education theorists, in a very premeditated way, wanted to present curricula that would destroy a child's innocence in much the same way that abusers want to isolate their victims from their family and friends. And so when they do it to children, they're trying to separate children from their families by presenting them with sexually provocative material. Now, I would love to do a whole episode on this because there's a lot to say, and we can give references and show the receipts. But the idea of not just presenting sexualized material, but also, as we were saying before, presenting anti-heroes, not giving a child a reason, a path to follow that they might be inspired by, to present them with a world that would make it impossible for them to survive and thrive because that would isolate them and basically prepare them for revolution, which is the end goal. And it sounds like it's such a preposterous thing to say for most healthy people, but this is part of the corpus of education literature over the past 100 years. But again, we will definitely devote an entire episode to this, and we are coming up on the end of our time. So I just want to say, if the panel has any last words that they want to throw at us.
I would just say heroes are inspiring for all the reasons that we discussed. And like Dr. D said, everybody should be reading hero stories, people of all ages, students of all ages. I think it's especially important for the young. And that's why, I love, one reason of many, I love Jack Schaefer's Shane. I think the story is about hero worship, and Jack Schaefer obviously very positive about hero worship. And one of the questions there is, who is it proper for Bobby Starrett to hero worship? His father, Joe Starrett, the productive, farmer, or Shane, the awesome, benevolent gunfighter, but still a gunfighter. It's a great story on hero worship. I recommend it to everybody. But yeah, hero stories for people of all ages. That's what I would say.
Andy, show us your book again and let our viewers know where they might be able to find it.
Thank you for the opportunity, Joel. Heroes, Legends, Champions, Why Heroism Matters. And of course, Amazon. Amazon is a great company, sells all books. And what I really love about Amazon today, now that they've switched to their own trucks and not using the postal service anymore, is you can order a book on Monday and it'll arrive on, or anything else, on Monday, and it can arrive at your door by Tuesday or Wednesday. So Amazon's a great company, put in a plug for them too. But Heroes, Legends, Champions, Why Heroism Matters is my book, published 2020 on the nature of heroes. Philosophic book, but it's done very inductively. That is, to start with a number of examples and then extract the principles from the examples. So I think it's very readable for all adult readers.
All right, thanks to our panel for joining us on this very inspiring conversation, and we'll see you next time on The Rational Educator. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Joel, Deanna.